Welcome to Healers Talk Healing, the podcast where we gather to explore the art and science of holistic healing, uncovering the secrets to a happier, healthier you. I'm your host, Nina Ganguly, and together we will delve into the intriguing world of holistic healing, delving into the mind-body connection, ancient wisdom, and natural remedies. Get ready for enlightening stories, thought-provoking expert interviews, and practical tips that will empower you to unlock your true potential and embrace a vibrant, balanced life. Whether you're an experienced wellness enthusiast or simply curious about the power of healing, join us on this exhilarating journey as we share the wisdom and insights that can truly transform your life. It's time to embark on a voyage towards a happier, healthier you. So, without further ado, let's dive into the captivating world of Healers Talk Healing. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Healers Talk Healing. I'm your host, Nina Ganguly, and today we are thrilled to introduce an extraordinary guest, Carol Pilkington. With a remarkable journey spanning over 40 years in the realms of astrological counseling, spirituality, personal development, and deep transformational work, Carol has a profound story to share with us. Carol's journey into the unknown has been both deep and enlightening. She has mastered the art of resting comfortably in the vast and often mysterious expanse of life, learning to appreciate its intricacies and wonders. Her expertise lies in her ability to quiet the internal voices that often plague us with doubts about our worthiness and significance. Her background is as diverse as it is rich, encompassing a wide array of spiritual, scientific, astrological, and metaphysical teachings. This eclectic mix enables Carol to present a unique blend of data, information, and tools, all tailored to the individual needs of those she works with. Today, Carol joins us to share her insights, experience, and wisdom on how to navigate life's complexities and emerge with a stronger sense of self and purpose. So without further ado, let's welcome Carol to Healers Talk Healing. It is so amazing to have this wonderful, exciting woman in front of me. You've heard her bio at the beginning, and these journeys I always find so incredible because we all have some sort of something that happens to us, whether we're young or at an older age. For me, it was much older, coming into this world of spirituality. And, Carol, I always ask the same starting question to all our guests here. And I'm going to, of course, ask you, what is your definition of healing?
I think for me, I can only come from my own experience. And what it means to me is revealing and being willing to see the conditioning and programming that we absorbed when we were children, and that it's not my fault. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't take responsibility, because once I've got the programming and the conditioning, it's mine to work with, right? But that is where the healing process must begin. First, to recognize that all that we have absorbed was not our fault. I am, and we all were, blank slates, if you will, or predisposed to the conditioning and programming, and that wasn't our fault. So we really need to begin first that healing process of letting ourselves off the hook of being at fault for or to blame for the things that we absorbed, the belief systems that we absorbed, based on what we were told, based on what happened to us. I call it the traumas of being human. And we all have to go through some kind of process to heal, if you will, from those traumas of just being human and just being born into this human existence, and learn how to navigate it as best we can. And we all need some kind of support, guidance, and help in doing that from those that have been able to move through it, see it, and come through it to the other side. And that's where we come in as I never would call myself a healer. It's one thing for another to call me a healer, but I would never be so self-important. It feels self-important to put that label on myself. I just am a facilitator for another's transformation.
I love that. I love that. I've never heard it put that the trauma of being human, put it quite like that, but I can really resonate with that. Because anyone you talk to, there's been something with varying, and I don't even want to say varying severity because it's all relative. What's severe for me may not be severe for somebody else, or vice versa. And so, I love that you say there's the trauma of being human. And if we could actually get that stuff happens. We come into this, well, anyways, my belief, we choose the path that we want to go on to learn our lessons, but we don't remember what we're supposed to be doing. And then we experience this thing and we come in and we choose our parents, and then our parents have also had parents who've also had parents who've also had parents. And then there's like this, what everybody has been referring to lately is the generational trauma and patterns of behavior and what we deal with. And so the process of being a facilitator for people to get to see, get to understand. And you used a really poignant word, which people can mistake depending on their definition of the word, which I at one point did too, which is responsibility. And what responsibility actually means for people. And you and I actually did a very similar, well, you did the early version of the course. You did EST and I did the Landmark Forum. So I think we have some Landmarkian language that we can share between ourselves, but it's clear that, we come in whole and complete. We are whole and complete, and yet we have such a hard time accepting that.
Yes.
And so, what led you on your journey? I know you had this awakening or this experience at a very young age. I'd love to hear, sharing of the experience, just so for our listeners, for those of you who are feeling like you're stepping into this new awakening, or you had one, and there's just, someone that's out there that's had something similar. It just gives you a piece of like, oh, I've got a community.
Yeah, first of all, I do want to address the language of responsibility. Since you brought it up, we often times associate responsibility with blame and shame. But I have discovered that it's got absolutely nothing to do with that. It's literally got to do with taking ownership of what we have to deal with now. Owning what we've acquired and taking responsibility for how we deal with it and how we work through it from here on out. And that's more empowering, than to say, this is my lot, or I feel bad or shameful, or this is my fault. It's just more empowering to take ownership of something. It's like the bowl was filled for us. We're holding the bowl. It's our bowl, and taking ownership for that contents of the bowl.
Oh, I love the visual, because I'm such a visual person. So I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I understand that, because my mindset is in, in alignment with yours when it comes to the word responsibility. Once upon a time, it was not. When I remember the first time I was told, can you take responsibility for your abuse? And I was like, what are you even saying to me? That doesn't even compute in my mind. Just the way I was
Right.
caught up in the word of responsibility, which was in charge of, your fault, you take the lead on. I'm like, how do you take the lead on abuse? Like, how do you do that? And when I finally understood the context, when I switched, or I was trained in switching my context, because I didn't switch it by myself, I definitely had help. When I switched the context of, okay, this happened. Now I have this bowl. Now you gave me the bowl. Let's just say you gave me the bowl. I have the bowl. And now I'm, yeah, I'm in charge of how do I respond to what's in the bowl. And so that
Exactly.
it is, you're right. The word empowerment for me is like freedom. It's freedom. Okay. Now I have the bowl. I can empty it. I can put it in the freezer. I can boil it and do whatever I want with it. And therein lies I think the freedom and I don't know if it's peace. It takes time to get to peace, I think, from my own experience, but it's like, oh, once I can be okay with the word responsibility, because it's all about the context you have it, and then I can say, I don't want this, so I'm just going to empty the bowl.
Right. And how
Whatever.
to go and take whatever steps you need to go about doing that.
Yeah, and I will
Right.
say for those, for the listeners, is that it's not something you do well on your own.
No.
You need a support of people around you. It could be one person, it could be 10 people. It depends, what you're dealing with, and how you what tools you want to use in order to empty the bowl, so to speak. And so, I think you and I, we get the, not responsibility. I think I was going to say we get the honor of being vessels for those who want to empty their bowl however they choose to do so. And again, I'm going to just round back up to, the start and the beginning of your journey, because it's a beautiful, fascinating journey, and let's go there.
Okay. So when I was, I don't know, between 8 and 10 years old, I had, I would say, a spiritual download,
Hmm.
um, a spiritual experience that I was love. I am love. And that was the foundation of my being. It became the foundation of who I am. And yet I was full of despair
Hmm.
at the same time because of what I saw around me. People weren't acting or behaving with love or from love. And they were treating one another badly and not well. And so I couldn't understand what I was given
Hmm.
and how to hold it, how to be it for myself and for other. And so I wound up, without realizing it, taking on all the woes and sorrows of the world.
Hmm.
And still I had to live my life. And through my own trials and tribulations of uncovering my own conditioning and programming from my family, society, school, our whole environment. I had to unravel that. And it took a long time to even begin to do that. So it wasn't until probably I was in my mid to late 30s
Hmm.
that I started that, which is when I took the S training.
Hmm.
And the S is earner, um, um, Earhart Seminar Training. That's what the EST stood for at the time.
Hmm.
And while it was very powerful for me, it didn't fulfill me to the point where it didn't answer the questions that I was asking,
Hmm.
which is, what is my purpose? What does it mean to be human? Why am I here?
Hmm.
And so I left the est world feeling unsatisfied.
Okay.
And it took me a long time before I found someone, a teacher, that would take me to another level of my journey. And it was then that I was introduced to so many different systems, teachings, and I was trained by a Jungian therapist who was also a metaphysical teacher, an astrology teacher. So my world completely opened up to all these different systems and modalities of teachings, from the scientific to the mystic. And I've been very, very fortunate to be able to incorporate all of my own experiences through my own transformations and be able to offer that to my clients and be able to pull out of my bag of knowledge, if you will, the different systems and modalities and teachings as it is needed in the moment for each person.
And that's what I think is great when you come from a background of not one specific thing, that there's a willingness to look at all the different ways that you can provide tools. So I get that, you did it for yourself at first. It's like, well, this tool didn't work, as I didn't go as deep as I'd like it to go. So I need to find something else. And then, you get something from there, and then there's something else, and then there's something else. And I think that's really part of what the holistic approach is about. It's the ability to use the differing tools. Like you've got, science-based, and you've got the spiritual-based and the metaphysical and the quantum stuff, and all of that allows you much more of a bigger, I would say, toolbox to support your clients in what they need. And so usually, for yourself, were you always someone who was spiritually based anyways after you had that message and you understood, or were you more logical and like, let me figure this out from a logical perspective? How did that work out for you?
Yeah, it's interesting because the career path that I took was very logical based. I went into the IT world.
Okay.
And you don't get much more logical than that, right?
No, you don't. I've worked in the IT world. It's very logical.
Yeah, it's very linear.
Yes.
And life is not linear.
Oh no.
And but I needed those skills too. Everything that happens in one's life is part of the process of bringing everything to bear in our growth process. I used to feel when I was in the corporate world that I just didn't belong there because it didn't feed my soul. It didn't feel my spiritual nature. And yet, once I did leave, in hindsight, I recognized that that was part of the process. I needed to be able to gain those skills, the logical, the critical thinking, the organizational pieces of what I needed to do, coordinating and bringing people together, being able to talk to people on different levels, from the CEO to the factory worker and everyone in between, and all these different kinds of skills that enabled me to be able to communicate all different kinds of principles and concepts up and down the ladders of abstraction to different people wherever they were, to be able to meet people wherever they are. And so that was important. And so I became more integrated as a person to be able to incorporate all of that into what I have become.
Excuse me, sorry. Oh, I think we're gonna have to definitely take that one out. But it's interesting that you say that, because I too came from the, I was in the corporate world first, not definitely not in anything logical. I've always been in customer service, some sort of leadership, what have you. But there's this time or in that something's missing. And for me, when I was in the world, in the corporate world, I was doing something that I loved, but then at some point, what was missing for me was when we became a public entity, the humanistic part of it changed. And I think I was growing and expanding at that time in my understanding of spirituality, of the dynamic of that, and it was missing for me. And it left me like, no, there's a different way. There's a different way to do things. And so while I learned a lot of wonderful skills, like you said, being able to talk to anybody, to being able to understand, to listen, to communicate effectively, creating systems, creating things that helped me in my spiritual business and my coaching business, and all of, those things that apply. Where I'm trying to actually get to is for the listeners to understand that where you are now, everything that has happened up until this moment has been advantageous. It may not feel that way. And a lot of times it doesn't feel that way. And then, when you can look back and, I'd love to hear, what those big moments were for you. Were like, oh, now I know why that happened. Now I know why that happened to get to where you are. Because I think for those who are just starting out into this world, or even us who've been here for a while, sometimes we forget how far we've come and what it took to get here. It becomes so easy at some point to be like, oh, I've always been this way. No, you haven't. There's been something that's over time that's unfolded or bloomed or whatever, what have you.
Yes, I think that that's so true. I think there are gradual things that occur to, we only know how much we've grown in hindsight. Because when we have grown and we have integrated our learning, our experiences into our everyday livingness, it becomes second nature, right? Like you said. And it's only when something comes to mind, or something has been brought to our attention to let us know that, oh, I've learned this, and this is how far I've come to get to where I am. For instance, a trigger. Let's bring it down to, something that people can relate to. When we get triggered by something, and what I mean by triggered, when our emotions and our feelings, and we become activated, something in our body, it's like that fight or flight response to something that we've heard, smelled, all of our senses get involved in the activation of something.
Join the Miracles Directory, where healers connect and wellness begins. Join a community of trusted holistic professionals, or find your path to healing and peace. Visit themiraclesdirectory.com. Start your journey today.
Based on what somebody said or whatever it may be, that's a trigger. And when that occurs, we lose ourselves in it, and we react based on that. But when we can, at another point, recognize that which used to trigger us, what used to cause us to react, no longer does, that's when we can see how far we've come. Is that, oh, that doesn't affect me like it used to in the past, or it doesn't affect me at all. We can really appreciate where we are. And that is so important to do, because when we don't recognize that something actually has happened that something has happened for us to grow and evolve, rather than just passing it off as, oh, that just happened. That's just something that happened. And we take it for granted. That can be detrimental to our continued growth. We don't appreciate what we have. And it's important to appreciate where we've come from, so that we know where we're also going, and appreciate the journey that we're in. I hope I've made sense and there's been continuity there.
100. You know, there's this thing about not going back to the past, and there's a thing about like looking back and seeing how far you've come. I think we need to distinguish for people that when you're looking at the past, and you can look at the past for the gifts, and you can then look at, oh yeah, this had to happen so that I could go over here, so then I could be over here, so now I'm over here. Oh, this trigger. Okay, so like I guess my level when I look back is when you said the word, like you get in the trigger, like you're in the moment, and there's all you're doing is reacting. Whereas you can get to a place where it's like, oh, this is my trigger. And you can start talking yourself down from, no, this person is not attacking you. They're just saying what they're saying, and you're just listening to what they're saying. And sometimes we do a good job and we're like, okay, they're just saying what they're saying. And sometimes you just want to take a person out, but you know what I mean? And you learn there's still work to do. And I think it's important to say, oh, right, like 3 years ago, I would have actually blown up, lost my mind, said things that I didn't want to say. And today I'm feeling my face is getting hot. I realize I'm getting triggered. I'm probably going to say something that I don't want to say unless I take this 3 actions, and then to communicate what it is that you need. And not say you did not get triggered. You just didn't get taken out by it.
Right.
Right. And then there's
absolutely
not getting stuck in the past of like, this is the way life should have happened at that time, and it didn't.
Yes. And we can see it if we do still get triggered, but not so activated as we once were, that there's more work to do. There's something there that still needs to be seen and uncovered, right? And then there are other times where we recognize that we're not triggered at all. It doesn't phase us in the least. And we can see how far we've come and how much we've grown.
Yeah. And the growing part is it's the challenging part. The growth part of growing kind of feels, Lynn always says it's the gross part. It can be the gross part. It's called the growth part, but it can be the gross, which is so, so true. And especially just when you think you've got it, like just when you're like, oh, I can breathe for a minute, life is good, nothing's throwing me off, everything's wonderful. And then boom, something happens. The universe is like, no, we're not done. No, the lessons aren't done yet. And like I was telling you before, you get to this place where it's like, no, but this is done. I thought I worked through this. And then, you realize, okay, well, I worked through it with the tools I had at the time.
That's right. Yeah.
And now,
exactly.
Or I'm going to need some different tools to continue to work on it. So what is your process, Carol, when you're working with a client who is, I don't know, you give me an example of something that is, that you've been able to actually incorporate like all the kind of different tools and tricks that you have to support a client.
Can you rephrase that question?
Of course.
A little bit.
So sometimes you come, for instance, I'll give you an example. So a client comes to me and they're looking for, coaching. They're looking to get things moving in their life. But then I realize, okay, well, it's not just coaching you need. There's definitely some healing work that needs to be done. I can provide some space, or maybe I need to, recommend some other people to come in and help with the process. You have so many different modalities. And when you're working with somebody, because sometimes I get a little bit of pushback when I'm like, oh, I really recommend that you do some energy work, and they're like, no, I just need to do this, and I need to figure out why I'm not doing it. You know what I mean? And so they're up in here in their head space, and this is just a specific way they think that they're going to get that support. What is like your process because of the variation and the multitude of tools that you have to help a client? How do you work with them to see the benefit of introducing something new?
My primary way of working with people is inquiry, to
Mm,
help people learn how to ask the right questions so that they can arrive at their own answers. Because again, it's all about taking responsibility for creating our reality.
mm,
And um, so it's really about asking the right questions. And I've been trained in the power of inquiry,
mm,
learning how to listen and be able to ask questions so that the client can answer their own question and really peel the onion that way.
mm-hmm,
And based on their own responses, that furthers the inquiry and furthers the conversation to help them unravel what I call the knots
mm,
of confusion, because the mind is confused and it's all based on language.
mm,
And so when we can begin to help a client, when I begin to help a client, it's really about unraveling the confusion of the mind.
mm,
And that enables them to see things in a clearer perspective. So for instance, the things that happen to us as a child, we carry those emotional responses with us through to adulthood.
mm-hmm,
But there can be a separation when we are able to be conscious of it, that there are the considerations of the child and the considerations of the adult. And when we can look at the considerations of the child from the adult perspective, it can really create a shift in how we respond to those old emotional triggers
mm,
of and reactivations of what happened.
mm.
So those are the kinds of tools that I help people with regards to unraveling the knots of confusion of the mind.
I love that you said that because it's such a great visual. It is like, when you say you have knots in your stomach or you feel all tight and knotted, it makes so much sense. It's funny because I myself just had this recently, had an energetic, I guess, healing and cleansing, and I literally visualized knots getting undone, ropes being cut, like all those things came up as I was doing the work and being worked on. And there's something that you said that's very poignant that I'd love to go into a little more conversation about, which is languaging, because it's so powerful.
Yes, it is. Everything is based on language. One of the things about the landmark forum is that Werner Erhardt's work with that was based on Martin Heidegger's Being in Time.
Mm,
And I was introduced to Martin Heidegger's work over these past 20 plus years. And when I realized that I had been introduced to his work much sooner than I realized, based on what Werner Erhardt was teaching. And really, it's about, there is what happens, and then there's the story that we tell ourselves about what happened, right?
right,
That is the foundation of the landmark forum. There's what happened and the story that we tell about it.
right.
And when we can really break that down, that's all about language.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about how we have interpreted and languaged what happened to us.
Yep. I'm
And so that's what I mean about unraveling the knots with regards to how we language things and the thing and the stories that we told ourselves.
right. Exactly. And then the story we tell ourselves is immersed in, context of what the words that we use. You know, it's interesting. One of the one of the things that when I was there that I got out of it was really context. Like it really took me out when I first heard the word responsibility. And there was, oh, and submit. It was like responsibility and submit. When you are a person who has experienced abuse, those two words are very activating,
Sure.
and then to get to a place of spirituality where that responsibility and submission is just like so much freedom. It's really about changing the context of the language that you use. And yes, we all know there's a gazillion studies about words that we use and how we use them and the tones that we use and what it does, to living, breathing things. That infamous study, I think, done on water and plants.
Mm-hmm.
Like one plant is spoken to lovingly, the other one is like got loud music playing, the other one's got being yelled at every day. And the difference in the growth and the frequencies that happen simply by, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, that's not exactly what happened in the study, but it's very similar. And they did something with them showing the waves of water and the patterns that happen with that. And so, I think it's powerful work when you can be the person who asks the important questions, when you can be because I've also been trained in that space of like being a place of inquiry, an empty vessel, nothing to gain, nothing to lose, but simply being the place of inquiry, asking the questions you may necessarily not ask yourself. Because like honestly, we really can't coach ourselves because we only have a limited view of our lives and our perspective.
That's right.
And
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, and I think it's important to be able to have someone to ask you, well, that's interesting. What makes you say that? And it just like blows up into this client having all of these wonderful aha moments, or maybe sometimes they're not so wonderful, but then you get to have that space of looking through it and walking through it. And so, you know, for I'm just wondering, I know for myself when I work with clients, the growth that happens for me just by being the space, in whatever capacity it is. What has it been like for you?
Oh my goodness. The, you know, being able to work with individuals who are going through their own transformational process only enables me to get better at being able to facilitate. It's like a circular motion. um it's very rewarding to be able to be the facilitator or the container, if you will, for another and their transformational growth. But by the same token, I'm receiving because it's enabling me to stretch and grow in my capacity to facilitate another person's growth. It just is that circular because I'm being met with different situations. Everybody's generally there are universal belief systems, right? And but each person's circumstances are different. So being able to facilitate a person's process based on their individual experience. And the more experience that comes in, the more of another's experience that comes into my awareness enables me to then be able to grow and to be able to facilitate at that level. So when we are working with people, when I'm working with people, I want to be able to facilitate for them so that they can rise to the next rung on their ladder, so that another person can take that place. So when we grow, others grow. So when I'm growing, I can facilitate that growth for another. And it's like lifting one another up to another level of each one's growth and ability to meet others where they are.
I like what you said about it's the ability to lift somebody up. There's this thing about, getting hand-me-downs, but really being able to give a hand up or get a hand up is just, you're right, it's so profound. Being able to be like a gap, you know, to it provides us so much healing. Like
That's right.
the healing that we get, so for those of you who are listening, who are healers yourself, or even thinking about, stepping into this world to have healing for yourself or become a healer, there's such beautiful gifts on both sides. And neither side is like, it's not an easy road. There are bumpy roads there for sure. All of the stuff that comes up on both sides as you're going through and becoming the facilitator, and as you are also dealing with uncovering the things that have gotten in your way of living the life that you so badly want to live. But I think this holistic approach is just so poignant. I love that we're not just looking at one part of a human being. We're, as a holistic community of people, we're looking at all the different pieces, the mind, body, soul connections that happen, that open up, and that allow us to then truly find or discover who we actually are.
Absolutely. And it's the other thing that I've learned too is that I'm just going to say God is a universal spirit, whatever. If spirit, universe, God, whatever you want to call it, isn't perfect, then why should we be? Because our growth is its growth, and vice versa.
It's interesting.
And for me, what has helped me is to understand that, and people will not come into our field that are that we shouldn't be working with. Like there's not going to be anybody too far above us. We are going to meet people at the level of experience that we are at. And we should trust that. But we also should be honest about whether or not we can help a person. Right? There's that ethical part of our teaching and training and our abilities and learning and knowing what exactly we can do and what we can't do. So I'm not a licensed therapist. And I would never pretend to be. So if somebody I felt needed a therapist, I would send them to a therapist. But I also know that the work that I do, while therapeutic in nature, it's not therapy. It's really work that I do is actually beyond therapy and complementary to therapy.
I love that you said that, because I have said the same thing in the past too. Like you understand that where your box is, not that you're in a box, but where your skill set lies, and where you to community for the right for the right things. Because while we innately want to just help everybody and be like, oh, I can help. No, there are certain things that maybe you're not trained in, and there's rules and regulations around certain things as well that we have to follow as any type of practitioner. But it's important to know that, while it's therapeutic, I love that you said that. It's a reminder for me too. While it's therapeutic, it's not therapy. That's something that's different. And it is part of a holistic approach to healing. So that was beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that. This has been such a wonderful conversation. It went everywhere and back again, and I love that. And Carol, so not only can people find you on the Miracles directory, how else can we get in touch with you? And is there anything, coming up in 2024 that you'd like to tell our audience about?
Yeah. I have what's called a free soul-filled living quiz that people can take. It's soul, SOUL, filled, FILLED, living, LIVING, quiz.com.
Okay.
And they can take that to see where they are in their own journey, and they'll get instant results in their inbox. Check your junk mail or spam folder if it doesn't get into your inbox. But it can help one assess for themselves where they are in their journey. And it's a really cool thing to take. It's like 1 to 4, it's like 4 minutes long.
Well,
about 5 different categories.
Has got 4 minutes, right? Take the 4 minutes and, check it out. It sounds exciting. Yeah, we're always in the inquiry of like, I want to know, what's my purpose? Why am I going through this? What's happening? So take those 4 minutes, go onto the site, check it out. And if you love what Carol is doing or you have questions, reach out to her. That's what she's, that's what we're all here for, but this is what she does, what she does best. So thank you so much for spending your time with us today, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. It's been wonderful, Nina.
Thank you for joining us today on Healers Talk Healing. We hope you've been inspired and empowered on your holistic healing journey. If you've enjoyed today's episode and want to continue learning and growing with us, don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, and review our podcast. Your feedback and support mean the world to us. Remember, healing is a lifelong journey, and you have the power to transform your life in profound ways. Stay curious, keep exploring, and never stop believing in your own capacity for healing.